First of all, Mark, thank you, and thank all of you for having me back again. I appreciate it. And how do you navigate? My first responsibility as a member of Congress is to my district, the 23rd. And it's unique being Kern County and Tulare. I think it's a microcosm somewhat of California. And I focus on there. And most of those issues deal with the same challenge we have in the state and federally. And from the last time being here was March 2016. I made a little news then because I said I watched this candidate, Donald Trump, reach people across the aisle that I haven't seen in quite some time. And people kind of ridiculed me here in the press, challenged me and said I was really off base. But then I watched in that election where he picked up Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. He had to pick up independents and others. Now, what have we been able to accomplish since that time? If you look at the economy today, at 4.1% GDP growth, people thought that was impossible. But an interesting statistic, in the last 49 years in this country, unemployment has only been below 4% 8 months. 8 months in 49 years has unemployment been below 4%. And 3 of those 8 months were this year. Unemployment claims at a 44-year low. We really have a unique opportunity for where this country goes, but there's really a large contrast to where the federal government and the state of California's government's at. I try to work with everybody. Senator Feinstein and I, we worked for 6 years, and in the last Congress we were able to get the WIN Act through. First major piece of water legislation in quite some time. So I try to reach out across the aisle as much as possible. California at times politically seems to be the complete opposite of where we are. I mean, I watched California, what was it, in the last 5-6 years? The general revenue has increased about $38 billion. Put that in perspective. That's the entire budget of Arizona, or even, you could pick a couple other states. But they didn't add anything to infrastructure. They went out and raised the gas tax. They've got a large surplus. And when you look at the surplus, a lot of that, even in the governor's own budget, what he credits is the economic turnaround. And much of that is driven through the federal government. So what we've been able to do by unshackling the American public, been able to work more, take greater risks, and I think the state has benefited from it as well.
Mm-hmm. So when people look at the 115th Congress and the fact that we have a Republican president, Republican Senate, Republican Congress, and what the accomplishments have been to date, one of the things that is often noted is the tax bill that was passed at the end of last year. And for Californians, in the polling that we've done, they don't see the connection between that tax bill and the economic prosperity that either they enjoy now or that they want for others. So they're concerned about the state and local tax deductions. They're concerned about what it means for debt and the fact that we might not be able to have money for other programs. So why don't you give us your perspective on how you think about the tax bill that's different from how most Californians are thinking about the tax bill that passed?
Well, anytime when you look at the tax bill itself and you watch that, I looked at a Democrat internal memo that was produced in the Assembly about the tax bill. The Democrat internal memo from the Assembly said 95% of Californians got a tax cut from this tax bill. And what happens is when they watch their paychecks increase in February and March, they didn't have a direct correlation to it, but that's what was causing it. A doubling of a standard deduction. But when you ask the people, are you better off? Or if you ask small business, is the future at a brighter point? I mean, from that point, it's the highest it's been since 2009. If you look at 600,000 more people re-entered the market force, 1 million new jobs have been created since the tax bill went through. If you go into the major entities of companies and corporations, you look at repatriation, probably the biggest benefiter of that is California. Then if you just look at the revenue coming in themselves, they would say where it came from. So I always look to it as the economy. Do you feel better off? How many quarters of economic growth have you had? Are you fearful that your kids, when they're going to college, are going to move back home? No, they're entering one of the best workforces they've ever seen. The challenge that we have today is a labor shortage to be able to deal with it because the economy is going so strong. But it's not just the economy that we were able to accomplish that did so well. Go to the VA. For the lifetime, a GI Bill, you had 15 years to use it or you lost it. Now it's for a lifetime. In the VA, of the treatment of our own veterans, there's so many great people who work at the VA, but bad people they weren't allowed to dismiss them. I mean, unbelievable atrocities, somebody coming in drunk, helping be part of a surgery. But now that all changed. So the morale is better, the service is better, the choice, getting to go to the outside. But let's touch on maybe two topics that a lot of people aren't really talking about. Human trafficking, modern day slavery. It happens in every city across this country. 100,000 Americans a year get trafficked. Unbelievable in today's age that it happens. And you know why? 70% of that happens because of the web. Places like Backpage and others. We just signed a bill, and I was sitting in the Oval Office when the president signed it, and there were a lot of survivors there. As he signed that, Backpage was shut down. They're now being prosecuted. A DA told one of my members that 82% of the places on the web are now gone. Or what if you want to talk about opioids? There's probably not one person in this room that somehow an addiction has not touched your family or a friend. 112 people will die today from an opioid epidemic. This Congress put more money than any Congress before, $4 billion, even after we did the CARE Act. We passed more than 52 bills just dealing with this. So we're tackling even beyond the economy, because when you look at somebody, just the tax bill itself, no, how's your family doing? The challenge is that we live in California, so your gas is higher, and what they do, raise the gas tax. The affordability is more challenging. And think of the backwards thinking of California. You could be affluent and afford all that, and you go out to buy a car, so maybe you want to buy an electrical car. California will subsidize you for that, and you're going to drive on the roads and you're not going to pay into the roads. But those who really fight and challenge, that are like in my district, that's hard to afford a home, they're paying higher in gas, they have to drive further for their job, they're getting punished. It's a backwards thinking between what California is doing and what Washington lets you keep more of your own money, lets you decide where to invest. You doubled your standard deduction, right? So it improved your life, and you feel it in the polling. But if you directly say it's just because of the tax bill, no, it's overall what we're doing.
When you've been home at in your district this summer, what are you hearing about the president's efforts around tariffs?
Well, this morning I had a meeting in my district with Secretary Perdue, and I had a number of farmers. I'm very proud of my district. So since I'm here, let me brag a little bit, okay? So Bakersfield and Tulare, Kern County is the county. Gene Fuller, Vince represented. Kern County produces more oil than any other county in the country, in the lower 48. It's in California. Even though California tries to punish it, but it's a major job creator and a major funder of schools and others. Kern County is the #1 ag producing in the entire nation. So our discussions as we sat around the room, is very productive. There's not one person in the room that didn't agree that somebody should have stood up to China quite some time before. Their theft of intellectual property, the unfairness of playing. We talked also about within come to NAFTA. I believe we're going to get an agreement probably within the next month. Timing is right. We've been negotiating for quite some time. There's going to be a new president in Mexico. It's good to maybe have that done before he goes in. Canada is going to have an election next year. The timing is right to get that agreement done. We wouldn't vote on it till the next one. You look what the president's been able to do with the EU of lowering their tariffs. You look at what happened within South Korea, the renegotiation of there. I think what they're looking at, they understand that there are some challenges going through, but for the long run, it will be much better off if we get a fairer process when it comes to China. especially with the long term of where the world looks like.
But it's made people nervous.
It's made them nervous. It is a challenge.
Yeah.
And that's why we're sitting, listening, talking, and planning. Are there ways that we can do to help? Are there markets we can open up in other places and move forward?
So the top two issues in our statewide survey for quite a while now have been the economy and immigration. Even though the economy is great, people have concerns about is it great for everyone? Things of that sort. We could come to that maybe at some point later, but let's turn to immigration, because that's a topic that where, again, there's federal and state tensions. You come from a district that's very diverse, and you are highest official on the Republican side from California. And where do you think the Congress can move forward on the issue of immigration policy?
I think we're going to solve this problem. Unfortunately, we had a couple immigration bills come very close to passing. It takes 218 to pass a bill. Between the two bills, 223 Republicans voted for one or the other. So you got 218 somewhere. The challenge that's happening is we make policy in the world of politics. The Democrats have now felt that they're not going to vote for anything. What was most disturbing to me, children's health insurance program. Do you realize that it just got extended the longest, a full decade, and the Democrats voted against it? So they're in a mode that they just want to hunker down and not be there. If just a few Democrats moved over and would work with us and even vote for it, we would have had an immigration bill done. I believe this president will actually solve immigration as we go forward. And immigration is diverse. We have to first secure the border. People all understand that and believe that. We have to do something different with our laws, because you watch what's happening to the children. 10,000 children were sent up without parents in the process. Economically, we need to have immigration to be able to continue our growth of where we're going. But it becomes a real challenge. I think we can solve this problem. I think we're very close to doing it. If we had willing partners on the other side, it would be done.
And what would comprehensive immigration look like to you?
You'd have resources for security in the wall. You would change how we treat people that come illegally across the border.
What would we do?
Because what most people don't quite understand, if someone's caught coming across the border illegally and they're from a contiguous country, from Canada or Mexico, they're sent back to their country. But if you come from another country, you're presented a ticket and asked to show up in a number of years from then. I think we should treat people equally all the way across. And I think we can solve that problem so it won't create the incentive. Half of everyone that's here illegally came here legally on a visa and have overstayed their visa. We have to have a program that actually works from that process. I think we can get there. We can deal with, if we don't hold you liable for what your parents did, from where the children are, I think we could deal with that. But the president the president offered this in the State of the Union. He probably went further than most of our conference would go. But he asked, let's have border security. And the Democrats said no. It's very interesting that I think they want something for a political campaign instead of something that actually secures where we are.
Well, this is something that Californians have been waiting for a long time.
I don't believe in sanctuary cities. And I don't believe that's productive. I don't believe that helps security. And I believe from, if you watch what California is doing now for the entire state, and you watch the local governments rise up, it really becomes a real challenge because, interesting enough, a number of Democrats want to abolish ICE. If you study what ICE has been able to do, from the amount of drugs they stop, from the number of MS-13 individuals they've been able to stop, gang members, these sanctuary cities give them safe haven. And I just don't believe, if you go into these communities and look, that any community wants more MS-13 agents. So I do believe there is common ground we can find. What was interesting is a number of Democrat members put a bill up to abolish ICE. So I said, I'll bring it up and you can vote on it. They quickly said, no, we don't want to vote on that bill. So we put a resolution just stating what ICE has done. Do you know how many children ICE has saved from being trafficked? Do you know how many they've stopped of those that actually are running those children? I mean, we're talking thousands of people, the amount of drugs. So all we did was put up a resolution that said that, and said that opposed to abolishing ICE. 163 Democrats voted present. I've never been asked one time in any debate for Congress to go there and fight and make sure you vote present on an issue. It was the most interesting thing, and that's where you saw a real contrast.
So is it going to be in this session of Congress or the next one that we might see?
I think it'll be in the next.
The next one.
Why can't we sit down and communicate with one another? They talk about an issue, and what's interesting is I spent every day for about 3 weeks in my office with the Democratic leader, number 2 in the Senate, in the House, with the Chief of Staff to the White House, trying to solve that problem. The challenge that I find today is that elected officials stand up and say, divide us, not unite us. That react to a situation that we're going to sit here where I know people in this room have different opinions than I do, and I have different opinion than you. But when did we get in this country that we can't talk to solve our problems? Why do we have to be so divided? Today, I was speaking to Fabian Nunes, who was the Democratic speaker when I was the leader. We still talk today and can we disagree philosophically, but there's no way our government is designed that you have to find compromise. I do not see that I will defend their right to react, I'll defend their right to speech, but the best thing we can do is not incite things like that, but actually sit down and have a conversation, because I know you just asked me questions about that I was going to deal with the issue they cared about, that I even put it on the floor and I voted for both bills. This country has become too divided, and I'm fearful there are elected officials who are trying to create us to be divided. We need to look at it in a different perspective, that even though if you have a different philosophy than I do, we have a system that works if we work with it. So, I thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for being here today. And we, like you, are encouraging those dialogues and discussions, and don't see any reason why we can't sit down and have a civil discussion and have points of agreement and disagreement. But we had an event with Senator Feinstein in San Francisco, and we were dealing with protesters as well. So
it's become the new norm.
It's part of the new normal. But let's go back to and thanks again for being here with us today. But let's go back to the fires and the search for solutions.
Yes.
You know, we had a report a year ago, and it was clear that we weren't doing the right things. You know, and the Little Hoover Commission pointed that out as well in their report. You've mentioned it, but I don't want to get into the finger pointing so much, because people are really raw from this. I've talked to people, to legislators where, you know, this is occurring in their districts now, and the people and the firefighters, and you know, it's not a time when people want to hear who's to blame. They want to know what are we going to do to help prevent this situation in the future.
We need to learn from these and not come back the next year and have. When I was here, I was talking before this happened. The vice president actually happened to be in Sacramento when Napa started, and we went to the emergency center there to talk to everybody, follow through. I was in the car with the vice president. We talked to the president at the time, and then we talked to Governor Brown as well in the process. And there was very good interaction between federal and state. The governor was even saying so. We need to manage these resources differently. And I think we've learned from that. And I find in these situations, we get into it right after it happened. Mike Thompson and I carried the legislation to put the relief bill through. Again, politics got brought into that, where some Dems voted against it. But we did joint fundraisers in D.C. for those in Napa who were injured in the process. But we shouldn't leave it right there. We don't have to point fingers, but let's try to do everything in our power to not have the intensity of these fires that are happening.
And what would that look like?
Well, first
going
of all,
forward?
I think you have to manage them better. I think you're going to have to thin them. I think you're going to have to go through, you're going to have to allow the utilities in to clean up through the others. Yeah, you're still going to have arson, you're still going to have lightning strikes. You're going to have to go in. The ability for roads are great breaks. If any of you have been a firefighter, you know how to do backfiring. A road is a great break, but the intensity of these fires, if you had gone through Napa, they were jumping freeways in the intensity of where they were going. They're creating the heat within where it is. So I think we have to look, the fuel has to be taken out of so many areas. I mean, we know that it works. I had a big fire in my area, and you went by home. Those that survived had gotten rid of the fuel around it from a number of distance through, and the firefighters gone through, give me a ticket. Those that did not, it didn't survive, the house didn't survive.
In the Farm Bill that just passed, there was part of the legislation involved
We had
dead
some
trees.
changes
Yeah.
to forest management. We have passed a bill within that. The Farm Bills passed in the House and the Senate were in conference right now, and this will be a perfect opportunity time to work on that.
Water legislation just passed in June at the federal level, and I'd like to hear what your thoughts are about how we're managing the expansion of water infrastructure in California. What do you think about the tunnels? What do you think about storage? What are we doing right? What could we do more?
I think we've got to do much more when it comes to water. You look at the population continue to grow. You watched the general budget growing by, in 6 years, almost $40 billion. Why haven't we been able to make the investment in? We've been able to work across the aisle, get the WIN Act through and others. I think it's a combination, not only just storage, the ability to move forward. In part of the conversation today with the secretary, we were talking about bringing a couple of the secretaries out to California, maybe in another month or so, and have that discussion, because we have a state water project, we have a federal water project. Let's see that we can get some ability, some synergy in working together. We don't have to be in such different positions, but if you're not allowing water through, you're not growing. If you're not saving water for the future, it's going to hurt California drastically. And if the management, what I've seen coming out of Sacramento, is going to another place that's going to make it unaffordable for a middle class family to be able to be in California.
What are your thoughts about the tunnels?
Look, I know Governor Brown has fought hard for the tunnels and the train. This is my prediction if you want me to make news. Whoever wins the governorship coming forward will cancel the train. I just don't see that going anywhere.
Why?
You look at every report. One, their idea is if they want to finish it off, they got to increase the gasoline tax. A state senator just lost his position over the gasoline tax. It's overwhelmingly popular to repeal the gasoline tax because it's such a punishment onto the middle class. I think that's going to be a defining issue in these elections. Two, the train never budgeted out. And for one, it's not high speed. Why would California want to build something that they wouldn't even be proud of? And you're going to have to subsidize it. So you're going to increase more, take more away from schools and others? I don't see how that plays. The tunnels, if they could be built, that they could guarantee water coming down, I would be supportive of it. But I see this continuing not to get to fruition. But I hold my judgment on that. I want to see water get to the southern part of California in the Central Valley.
And PPIC has done a lot of work on the possibilities around groundwater and groundwater storage. You have any thoughts about that as somebody who's focused on
Another great
water?
thing to brag about Kern County, they're the best when it comes to groundwater storage. And they store water for Southern Cal and everybody else. It is something we looked in the future because we know how precious a commodity water is. And that's why when you talk about storage from above and below, and look what the federal government just passed. We're increasing a number of dams going through. You're going to see action taken. So we are getting somewhere when it comes to water. I'm hopeful the state will join with us.
Moving from water to air and auto emission standards, which a couple of weeks ago, there was obviously a lot of controversy around that, and again, the federal-state relationship. What are your thoughts about whether the state should be able to set its own auto emission standards and air quality standards?
I have a real concern about air quality because from where I come from, the bottom of all the mountains, and we collect all the way from San Francisco. What I have found because of these fires, there's studies that are showing they're producing more emission than all of our cars are doing. That's why the focus of you going back correctly within there. Look, I'm a 10th Amendment person, but I also understand that if California does one thing, it puts the rest of the country in another place. I thought this is a place that federal and state should have got together and worked out the difficulties. I know the feds tried to sit down.
What would that look like?
Well, look, I won't predetermine what it is, but when you set emissions numbers that people can't even reach, you're not taking economics into play. I think we should look at economics at the same time. I want to have the quality of the air there. I also want to be able to achieve that. But I want to work with both sides. I know once President Trump was elected, it seemed as though California wanted to be in a position to just sue and fight instead of take a pause and listen and find places we agree with. You know, the governor came back to Washington and we sat down. He came and met in our conference. He met with me. And I told him, I said, look, there are places we're going to disagree, but there are places we should agree, right? That politics should not be a play of it philosophically, right? And I want to be helpful. I'm from California. And I thought I had a very good discussion with the governor. Unfortunately, the next day he's out on the steps protesting with the Democrats as they're protesting. I think there's a place and time for that, but I also think in any administration, let's find a place that we can find common ground. I think they could have sat and negotiated with the federal government and we could have had one emission for everybody and everybody would have been happy.
Might that still be possible?
It is still possible.
Yeah.
It just takes a willingness.
Yeah. I want to talk about healthcare. California has had a lot of people sign up for Medi-Cal, and since the Affordable Care Act, and many people now also getting their insurance through the health exchange. And where will the Congress go next in terms of repeal and replace, and what does it mean for all the people who are now either in Medi-Cal or in the health exchange?
Well, your question is, where will healthcare go? So the answer will be, it depends who gets elected. And
is Congress planning to come back to repeal and replace?
I think if you looked at what Congress had done, anybody who was on Medicaid at that time, nothing changed for you. As long as you served on Medicaid, it stayed exactly the same. But what it would do is it would give states greater flexibility. What I did, I brought a number of states together, governors from Republicans, Democrat, and others. I just listened to them and said, what are your challenges? I had one governor tell me this story. That what he wanted to do was, and it was a smaller state, he wanted to pile about $200 million back in to the healthiness of it. He said what he could save that money, instead of mailing to the recipients, email them. But to do that, he had to fill out all these forms with the federal government because they controlled whether the state could even do that. And it took him, I forget the actual time, it was a number of months. And then he received an email denying him the right to do that. And I heard from Democrat and Republican government, give us the flexibility to manage it, and we can manage it better. And I'm a firm believer, as I said, in 10th Amendment, we can have all these pilot programs out there seeing how we can better manage the health care, because it's different in different areas as well. But we did nothing to, if you were currently on it, you were going to stay. But what I found today, if you keep it currently where it is, it's going to go bankrupt. Now, say Congress flipped and was controlled by the current minority party. They much like what Sacramento pointed as a single payer, right? What was it going to cost? 3 times what California brings in? It would end Medicare as we know it. It would end if you have health care from your employer. And for the first time in a number of years, that's actually gone up because of the economics of what we've been able to change with the tax bill. It's interesting, you had asked that tax bill. Do you realize in 48 of the 50 states, the electrical bill is lower because of the tax bill? But if you poll that, no one will know that, right? There's so many benefits that have gone into this process of where we are. We cannot sustain it where it currently is. And what I really think we need to do is we need to flip it on its head, and we need to make sure base it on outcomes, the quality of health care they're provided. And I think when our bill, I think you'll see modifications to it and changes as we work forward. But yeah, we're committed to changing where we currently are because it cannot sustain itself. You've taken away choice from individuals. States do not have flexibility. And the health of the individuals and the quality we want to improve.
So you say that it depends on the election, so this is something that you're thinking for the next
there's more than
session.
There's more than 100 Democrats in Congress who want a government-run health care of Medicare for all. Think about what that does. It ends your employer-based health care. It will bankrupt Medicare faster than it currently is today. And the cost, what was it, $42 trillion, billion dollars they had in the process? I don't understand how that's the answer, because it's going to put everybody in a bad situation. But if more than half of their entire conference is supportive of that, they signed their name as a co-sponsor of that legislation. So again, a big contrast of the direction that we'll go.
Yes, I don't know if it's 42 trillion or what it is, so the fact check.
I think Bernie Sanders' version was. I don't know if the other was 32.
So, but I do want to talk about some other numbers, and that has to do with the census. And where PPIC has been trying to raise awareness about the importance of the census, both for representation and the federal at the state. And there's concern that that we might not have an accurate count. Is Congress doing enough in terms of funding the census this time around?
Yes.
What can you tell me?
Well,
can you assure me of this?
Sure, yeah, 100% we're fine. Now, census is very important. Every 10 years you take it. So many of the formulas of funding that go forward is based upon a census. You want to make sure you get it right. One thing that has happened, and different administrations have done census, you improve each time you go forward. And it's not easy, but with technology today, we can make sure the accountability is a little bit, I don't know if that's you or me. We've had a couple hearings on oversight, making sure Secretary N and others that they're preparing for it. It is a big job. And this is always the fear anytime before a census, are we prepared for it? And that's why we're doing the oversight on it, to make sure we will be prepared when we go forward.
Is there enough money?
I believe there's enough money as we talk today. If there's more in the process, we'll make sure we get this done. But the way I look at it is, so many people, money solves problems? No. I find that we could be more efficient, actually save money, but we'll make sure there's enough in the process. But we could have greater accountability. Think about how much your life has changed. Life as we know it is moving faster than any point that we have in our lifetime. I actually believe we're living through the fourth industrial revolution. Think about it. You don't have keys to your cars anymore, right? Just in your pocket. That phone he holds up has more technology than Apollo that landed on the moon, and that was 50 years ago next year. And remember, when we started out to go land on the moon, the Russians were way ahead of us. They'd already put the first satellite up, Sputnik. They'd already went ahead of time. And when Kennedy said, you know, we're going to make this challenge, we were behind. And so what I have found, if we can make government more efficient, more effective, and more accountable, I mean, I sit back and I look as a Californian, I read these headlines, I look on the Facebook. Has any of you gone to the DMV recently? Have you tried to go to the DMV? The DMV is the only agency I know that asks you not to come there. And then I look across the street, instead of going out and auditing, finding out what the problem is and try to solve it, they vote to deny an ability to audit it. That's not a partisan issue, that's just backwards. I think government has a responsibility to their citizens, their constituents, to be effective, efficient, and accountable. And technology can allow us to do that. That's why I'm so much into how we change the VA. I mean, when I first went to Congress, I did an audit on the VA because a number of my veterans were telling me they couldn't get an appointment. But you could walk out on the street with a phone and you could get a Uber, you can rate the driver, they can rate you, and you could pay all right there. Why couldn't we do half of this from the DMV before? I mean, there's a better way to do this in the process that's happening today.
So We had a conversation with the California Secretary of State yesterday, and he likened the issue of making sure our elections weren't hacked into. He said it was like, well, one of his colleagues in Minnesota actually said it's like a race that never ends.
Well,
what I'd like to know from you is Congress doing what needs to be done so that there isn't Russian intrusion into the 2018 and 2020 elections?
Perfect. If you watched on the Omni bill that we passed, we made sure the funding was fully there. There's actually, I think, an excess of, I might get this wrong, I know it's 40. It's either 40 million or 40 billion set aside where states haven't even taken it from before. There's a number of states that haven't even gone forward. A lot of this is a responsibility also from, on a 10th Amendment rule, we got these secretaries of state. But from a federal end, we have put the resources in there. Some of them have not used it. We had made sure it's fully funded throughout. We want to make sure that, one, people are not meddling, people are not successful. And what I see the Russians continuing to do, the Russians wants to continue to divide us as well. Technology allows that to happen. There's so many things I'm fearful that's happening before the election as well. I'm fearful what's happening in social media that's denying our own opinions and voices to go forward. I was just on the phone the other day with Jack Dorsey with Twitter on shadow banning. You may put something out, but people aren't able to see it. I watched right before the primary in California, if you Googled the California Republican Party, you know what it said our ideology was? It wasn't the party of Lincoln or the party of Reagan. It was Nazism. I watched one employee take down the president's Twitter account. I've watched if you went onto Instagram and you researched Donald Trump Jr., it would warn you that this is a hateful site to go forward on. There is power that people have, that social media is providing so much of our information, much more than what print or others are doing. And an algorithm right there can deny us to actually have our own voice to go forward and whether you can see it. So yes, we fully funded on that end, but also I want to start looking at what's happening from a point of view of making sure that it's a transparent network as well.
And how do you feel about the media today? We have many reporters, I think, here, so I should just mention that. You know, how do you feel about the media and its role in democracy?
Well, look, there's a place for the media, and what's interesting today with social network, everybody's the media, right? You can move something and make it go viral faster than somebody else. This is the one thing I think we should do with the media. Not we do something, but I think collectively, media is different today than I think it was in the past. When you go home tonight, you can get your news philosophically presented to you in the philosophy you want. And they'll cover events that I'm at, and they both kind of cover it different. And it's not news, it's opinion. Now, they're very honest. They're opinion providers. But I serve in a city that was decided because Hamilton cut a deal for a banking system. You know, it's compromise. But it's almost works to divide us further. I have not watched, in my time in politics, what I've seen media at times on certain positions almost have a different position. Now, it's okay to have a different position than me, but I think it's, for a newspaper to be successful anymore, it's very difficult. So can they spend the time to have the editor? Can they spend the time to do the longer research on the story? No, because you'll go onto the web faster. And if you want people to have more eyes on the web, you've got to be more dramatic in it or more controversial in it, right? And so the media is so important. We're on another check and balance of where we go. The only thing I ask when people are presenting it, there are sites that to me don't seem like media, and they put whatever they want and they try to divide people. I like people going through editors, doing checks, because I read so much about me that's in my own personal life not true. You know, from my age to everything else in life. So,
I have one other question I want to ask you, and then we're going to go to our audience. And I've wanted to ask you this for a while, but why do you want to be Speaker?
Thank you. My first answer is I want to make sure a Republican can be Speaker. History is against us. I'm not assuming anybody's where you are philosophically, but if you watch, since World War II, there's only been 2 times in modern history that the party in power actually gained seats in an off year. 2002 and 1998. I actually gave a presentation to the president at Camp David earlier this year. Normally the party in power loses roughly 32 seats, 23 seats is our majority. The reason why I want a Republican to maintain the speakership, I think the next century can be ours if we finish this job. Economically, where we are, we're almost energy independent from one standpoint as well. You're in a stronger position when you have been before. We've got to deal with our debt going forward. I see what the option is on the other side, and I don't see the answer coming forward. So I will leave here, get on a plane, I'll go to Indianapolis, I'll go to Iowa, I'll go to Minneapolis, I'll go to Omaha, Nebraska, and I'll be back in California on Sunday, then I'll be back on the road again. If I watch this election, it is different than anyone I've seen before. It changes week by week. The number one thing you want to watch in an election like this is the generic ballot. The generic ballot is a good indicator because it's a straight up, do you want a Republican or Democrat in control? When I gave this presentation to the president, it was plus 13 for the Democrats. I said we'd lose the majority overwhelmingly. If you watch where the generic ballot is, if I just watched, realpolitics.com will do a running average, but I watched one the other day that came back as Democrats plus 3. We'd keep the majority. You see, there's a 4-point advantage based upon that we don't represent the cities, we represent suburban areas Republicans. So if we get 49% of the vote, we'll get about 53% of the seats. The entities to watch in here is always the intensity. So the generic ballot, the other day I watched on this one, was D plus 3. That's the exact same place that we were the day before the 2016 election. Too many retirements on the Republican side. The most there's been probably like 80 years. The intensity level is greater on the Democratic side than on the Republican side. We've had 10 special elections. Republicans have won 8 of them. The one that we lost in Pennsylvania, we lost to a Democrat who was pro-life and pro-Second Amendment. And we lost a couple days later. I always said if we had a different candidate, we would have won that one. It is intense in the process. On the financial side, Democrats have done quite well on raising money across the country outside of their districts within. But let me give you one example on a seat that you will watch. Tom Price's old seat, Karen Handel's seat in Georgia. This is the Buckhead area. The places that are the entities you want to watch in this election are going to be women, college graduates, and seniors. They're really going to make up the determination, and 2 million people will determine who's the majority. It's all going to be on turnout. A higher college educated district more likely in a swing vote. If you looked at this suburban seat there, Hillary Clinton, I think, only lost it by about 1.5 points. It's like the 3rd highest educated Republican seat there is. They had an open primary where you could actually win in the primary. Democrats selected on one individual. He raised a tremendous amount of money. The state that gave him the most amount of money was California, second was New York, and then it was Georgia. Came very close to winning it in the primary. Karen Handel came out of our primary. We, Republicans, have won the majority by winning married women. The married women, number one issue is safety. Do they feel safe in the job? Does the country feel safe? Do their children safe from drugs? Are they safe online from human trafficking? Are they safe in their schools? Safety is the major concern we all have for our children. President Trump won college graduates by 3 points. Independence matter. When we won the majority in 2010, we won independence by 18 points. When we lost it in 2016, I think we lost it around that same amount of time, independence. So independence, where you watch. But in this seat, Karen Handel was losing independence, married women, came back and actually won the seat. How'd you do it? We focused on turnout. We focused on safety. And there's another issues of going forward. I think this perspective of where if you look and lay out the Democratic agenda and you lay out our agenda, if it's going to be on ideas, we're going to win. If it's going to be about the economics, in 1998, Bill Clinton was impeached at the time. Republicans were supposed to gain seats, and at the end of the day, Democrats won, picked up 5 seats, and we changed speakers. How? He had 6 quarters of economic growth. Republicans had shut the government down and lost, and his issues triangulated with welfare reform and others. We have just now entered our 6th quarter of economic growth. Schumer shut the government down. It's different today because of so much social media. You don't remember it. If you take our issues and you take names off it, overwhelmingly support. It'll end Medicare as we know it on their health care. They want to abolish ICE. And Tom Stiers is out there wanting to capture government to impeach a president. He brags that his list is bigger than the NRA. Terry McAuliffe, former governor of Virginia, he wants to be president one day. He ran all the Clintons. He was on the Sunday News show last week. What did he say? Yes, we should look at impeaching the president. I don't think America wants to turn over Congress to abolish ICE, destroy our healthcare system, and just take it over to impeach a president. And so when I look at 1998 and what everybody was looking at, I feel pretty good about where we are. I know it's going to be competitive, and I know week to week is going to change, but I think if this is on ideas, we're going to be there. This will be the year of the woman, though, and I think that's productive. If you look at in these primaries, when they're a woman versus a man, there's a study that just came out, said it gave about a 10 points. Inside a Democratic primary, a woman versus a man in an open seat won 71% of the time. From that perspective as well. And I'm very proud of our party, the youngest woman ever elected, Elise Stefanik. She just had the president in this week signing the NDAA. And this is when we want to talk about issues. In the last number of years, military was cut 20%, but the world's not 20% safer. We just increased our spending. We gave our military women and men one of the biggest pay raises they had in almost a decade. We've got a lot of things that we have accomplished. If you look at, in modern history, the last 25 years, the Congress that has passed, Quorum did this study, the Congress that has passed the most bills out of the House of Representatives is the current Congress you're in. The most out of committee, the most bipartisan in modern history. So we have a lot to talk about. We have to break through the noise and the chatter to get people to see it.
So that's your answer to my question, and you're sticking to it, huh? Okay.
Okay, my favorite movie is Braveheart. And I'm going to tell you the favorite scene of Braveheart, okay? It's after the first big battle where they fight and they win. And they go into this pub. And William Wallace is there and they're knighting him. And then they all start fighting over different land. And William Wallace starts walking up the stairs. And they stop and say, "Why are you leaving?" And Wallace turns around and he says, "You think these people exist to provide you with possessions. I think your possessions exist to provide these people with freedom. I didn't run for Congress to become speaker. I ran for Congress to change the country. And I'm going to keep doing that. And I think at the end of the day, if we're successful, the person that puts in the work and the best person for the job will be able to be sworn in. So that's my focus. It's not about getting possessions. It's about providing more freedom."
Okay. Well, that's my answer. How about some questions from you? Yes? Thanks.
Question about HR 6.
Okay.
All right, tell me what that is.
I have a question.
And we have to be very brief with our
Yeah.
questions. We want to take a few, and
It's-
we're already in overtime.
Right. It's the bill about the opioid epidemic, and that it depletes CMS funding by about $3 billion and shifts it from one to another. It doesn't really increase any of the money to help deal with this issue. Is HR 6 too little too late, and is the healthcare insurance system bankrupt?
The answer is no. It's more. HR 6 is more than 52 bills going through. We actually added $4 billion, and we did it in the Omni. The most, and this is built on the Congress before where we did the CARA Act, the dealing with opioids. Opioids is not one central answer for all the challenge. I mean, think about this in all the different places. If you're a medical doctor You can have somebody complain to you that you didn't prescribe them all the way. If you go sit in a hospital, the first thing they ask you when you're sitting in the room is, how do you feel? And they have all those faces, from a sad face to a happy face, and they want everybody to be happy, right? You've got so many opioids sitting out there that will go from Excedrin to opioid where we've never developed something in between. You could be addicted within 5 days. Have you ever spent any time within one of these treatment centers? I go to charter schools and these treatment centers, and what I do, I sit down and I have people that are in the treatment center getting their methadone, usually on 3 years, and I ask them who they are. And who, you know, I find out they are? It's probably the youngest, brightest star athlete in high school that got injured and had a surgery. Or it was the police officer I saw the other day that hurt his knee in training and had surgery and got addicted. Or it was a minister's son that went out, and you know what he found afterwards? That he couldn't afford it, so he started going to heroin. This is an epidemic with so many different problems out there. That's why it is a large number of bills built off the CARE Act. We'll still have to do more, but we are changing the tide of the direction we're going, and I'm proud of the fact that we led on it.
I'm told we're out of time. I'm sorry, we don't have time for more questions.
Oh, man. Bob had his hand up too, okay. No, we don't need to go there. Let's do one right over here.
Okay, let's do one more.
That's a silent protest. I respect that.
Congressman McCarthy, and everybody, wish you a good afternoon. I have a question regarding a particular bill, HR 392. It's called the Fairness for High Skilled Immigrants Act. So I came to this country as a legal immigrant 12 years ago, and I like the people, I like the culture, I liked the kind of work and how hard work pays off here. And so I applied for a green card. But I'm stuck in a 70-year-old limbo for green cards, just because I come from a country, and my country is India, and there is a per-country quota for every country for employment-based green cards.
Okay. I think there's a question in here.
I know the question. I know the bill.
Okay.
I actually voted for this bill, and in our immigration bill, we actually changed that and solved it. And it's authored by Kevin Yoder. And if you look in the appropriation bill, you'll find that we deal with part of this at the same time. But this is a prime example of why we need immigration reform. It's a prime example in the 2 bills that we brought forth would have solved this problem as well, because it was implemented inside those as well.
All right.
Thank you for your thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. And thanks.